Hey guys, welcome back to the channel here. A few of you guys have been asking for an update video on the Civic LX Sport I have. Now this has been my daily driver for the last 5 years, and yes, I still have it. I bought it in May of 2015, and when I bought it I had 107,000 miles on it, and now it's just under 180. It's about 100 miles away from 180,000, so I figured I'd make this the 180,000 mile update video. So as you can see, I do have EP3 SI wheels on it. I picked those up locally for a really good price, and the tires on them were in really good shape, and they're super quiet when on the road. The Yokohama tires, all seasons on there, so I'm just kind of running those for now. But my plan here, and what you see is all these parts, is a little refresh I'm doing on the car. And I'll get to that in a few minutes here, but just to go over a few things with the car. If you guys saw recently on my channel when I bought the car, you know, not recently, but like 5 years ago, I put up some videos giving it like a 130,000 mile update review, and my current and the failures I had with the car when I did that was the steering rack started leaking, so I got the steering rack replaced, and the VTEC solenoid was leaking at the back and threw a check engine light. Both those things happened within like 10,000 miles of me buying the car. I think maybe even 5,000 miles, so they happened right away. I fixed them, and they haven't been a problem since. So the car has been running perfect throughout all this time. I never had a problem with the engine, and in the last 50,000 miles since I did my 130,000 mile update video, I have added some tow capability to it, and I'll post a separate video going over my setup here, but I have added a CURT Class 1 hitch. Of course, it has my SI axle back muffler on it for a little bit of tone. Sounds pretty good for a daily driver. And you guys saw in my previous videos, this piece was plasti-dipped black. However, it is plasti-dipped aluminum now, so it matches the silver on the car really well, and I think it looks a lot cleaner than the black I had on there before. So the only things I've had happen with it in the last 50,000 miles is recently I had a problem with the AC compressor. Now, middle of summer, last summer, I was actually taking my wife to her bridal shower in the middle of July, and we were merging into traffic, and I smelled something burning, and all of a sudden the air conditioning went hot. Well, I did a pull to like 6,000 RPM, and I guess the compressor didn't disengage because I burned out the clutch and coil. So I didn't have AC for like the rest of the year last year, but I just dealt with it and fixed it early this year. So it didn't really affect the car at all for drivability. It just didn't have AC. I mean, the car still drove fine, and was not a problem, but you know, I'd say middle of the winter, this past winter, probably December, around Christmas time, I heard some kind of grinding noise from one of these pulleys come out of nowhere, and it kept getting worse and worse. When you're on the highway, you didn't hear it, but at idle, it sounded like something was going to fall apart. At first, I thought it was my power steering pump, but I ruled that out. Second, I know, just listening with my ears and the way it would change tone and stuff when there was different loads on the alternator, I figured it was the alternator pulley. So I actually put an alternator off of a 2011 Civic with 50,000 miles on it recently, and the second I replaced that, I realized the grinding noise was still there just as bad. So this car does have a much lower mileage alternator on it now, but the problem that caused the grinding noise was actually the AC idler pulley way down there. The bearing inside of it just pretty much self-destructed. So when I was getting an inspection on, just out of curiosity, I asked Honda how much it would be to fix the clutch and coil on the AC compressor. I mean, the compressor itself was fine, just the coil would not engage. So they quoted me like $600, and they said it's just more efficient to buy a new compressor with it all together, and that was with the labor and everything. So I said absolutely not. I looked at some aftermarket full compressor units on eBay from Denso, and those were around 350 bucks, so I almost went that route. But then I watched a YouTube video that showed a guy replacing the clutch and coil on his AC compressor with like a $40 Amazon Chinese kit, and I said, what the heck, this car's not worth a ton anymore. It's got 180,000 miles on it now. I took my chance and I ordered that kit, and that is what is on there right now. I don't know if you can see him down there. I have a hard time seeing the camera, but I did replace the clutch and coil with a $40 Amazon kind of aftermarket unit, and it has been working for a little while now, a few months. Haven't used the AC too much. It's only like 75 out today, and I'm really going to put it to the test this summer though. So other than the AC compressor, which is kind of normal for a car with almost 200,000 miles, it really hasn't gave me any problems. It runs very strong. It's still a fun car to drive. The transmission is extremely smooth. It's definitely smoother than my SI ever was, and it's never had a grind in its entire life. 5-speed manual, and still humming along in here. I love this car. It's got the SI wrapped steering wheel and the leather wrapped steering wheel. Just doesn't have the audio controls on one side, but I don't really care because I just reach over there and grab. So in regards to how the car is holding up in the New York winters, of course I drive this all year round. I have snow tires for it in the winter, and you guys see a video I posted a couple years ago. I fluid film undercoat with the spray cans, the HRV and my Civic, to make sure that there's no, to give them the best chance of surviving all the winters here in New York. And for the most part, the car has been pretty rust free for me. The only weird thing that I'm gonna have to tackle now is, I don't know if you guys can give me some feedback on if this is a common thing with other 8th gens, but it's the weirdest spot on both sides of my door. This seal has like collected rust, and it has blown a hole through the door frame right in the rear, and this is really the only rust, the only major rust I should say, on the car. There's a bunch of surface rust underneath the car, which is normal, that I just fluid film over, and it's not really getting any worse, but this has been slowly deteriorating. And this sits up against the seal here, and you can see the rust stain on the seal. But my plan is to just take a wire wheel to that, cut out the rust, and maybe just form a sheet metal panel and weld it in there and paint over it, just to stop it from spreading, because it's not very pretty in there. I don't really know what exactly caused it, because it's not like the seal was leaking. I've tested this with a pressure washer, and I kind of blasted this area of the door, and this inside part never really got wet. So when it's raining outside, I don't see how that's causing the inside of the door past this seal that's totally functional to be corroding and whatnot. I don't know if the water is coming from inside the rail up here and dripping down and collecting here. I'm not really sure, but that's the only complaint really with the car is for rust. It's 10 years old now, and most Hondas have the cancer in the rear, and this is probably where it's going to start up here. It's starting to have a little bit of discoloration on this edge of the lining here, but I do coat that with fluid film before the winter starts. Even the outside I coat with fluid film, so it looks terribly dirty all winter, but the salt is actually never getting to the paint or the rust underneath, the surface rust. So I'll show you the other side, what I'm talking about too with the rust issue. This side's not as bad, but it's like the exact same thing. I'm sure if I stabbed, it's pretty crunchy now, if I stabbed that with a screwdriver, I would blow right through there. So yeah, definitely a weird thing going on with these rear 8th gen door frames here on the 4 doors. All right, so now let's talk about maintenance and what I'm replacing and why on this car. Now, one of my only complaints with the base model Civics of the 8th gens was they weren't very sporty. The 5-speed is fun. The R18 obviously is not a very peppy motor. You're not going to wring it out and have any fun with it. But it gets great gas mileage, and it's bulletproof. You can't really kill that engine as long as you do oil changes regularly and take care of it. It's been a very low cost of ownership with the engine as far as it running good and always getting mid-30s miles per gallon and whatnot. But my only complaint with the car ever since I got it is how soft the suspension is. Now, anyone who has a base model, EX, LX, DX, 8th gen Civic, anywhere from 06 to 2011 knows if you put more than like one person in the rear seats, this thing will tuck the tires up almost and pretty much bottom the suspension out to the bump stops. Even when I throw the rack on the back for the bike on the hitch, like I said, I'll make a separate video showing my towing setup for this car and what I do tow with it. The suspension has definitely been my biggest gripe with the car. That has, the LX sway bar is softer up front compared to the SI, and the rear is like a toothpick on there, and it does absolutely nothing. The spring rates are very, very soft, and this thing is a little bit tired now. You hear some clunking over bumps and whatnot, and I know that the end links are shot on the sway bars, which is causing the clunking and whatnot. The suspension being extremely soft doesn't help the sway bar longevity. The ball joints and the end links get a lot more abuse because of how soft the suspension is. And I do have some really nice twisty back roads for 35 minutes to get to work. So I wanted to spice this thing up a little bit, make it a little bit more fun of a daily driver. And I'll go through the parts I'm gonna do here on it. So as you can see over here, the first thing I got is an SI rear sway bar from a guy in California. The thing is very clean and has the ball joints, the end links already on it, so I'm probably just going to slap those on, even though I ordered new end links for the front and the rear on this car. if those are in good shape, I'm just going to throw them on there. But the SI rear sway bar is a 17mm compared to the toothpick that's on this, so that should definitely add a lot of rigidity to the rear end when going around corners and try to loosen up the rear end. But I have the sway bar end links, new nuts and hardware for them. So I just refreshed the rear brakes on this. I think I got 170,000 miles out of the original rear drum brakes on this car, and the drum brakes were so nasty looking with rust that I said, you know what, I'm just going to order centric pads, centric drums. I painted over them with some extra black paint to make sure they last longer. So one thing that kind of fought me when I was replacing the rear brakes was, and I did the wheel cylinders as well for the drum brakes, were these little intermediate brake lines that went from the soft line mounting bracket to the wheel cylinder in the drum brake. The fittings were pretty much seized with the line, so I had to twist the heck out of the line to get them apart and replace the wheel cylinder. So I didn't really feel comfortable with leaving it like that for so long, so I ordered from Honda. These are the intermediate lines that run right to the wheel cylinder. It's probably going to last another 10 years, which is great, because these do collect a lot of salt on them and are known on the, especially in the late 90s Civics, to blow out brake lines in the rear. All the other brake lines underneath the car are in pristine condition. They must have changed the coating they used from the EKs and stuff back in the day. This car has seen 10 winters, and the brake lines underneath the frame all the way to the rear are still in very good shape. So gonna replace these and not have to worry about it anymore. Got the SI rear sway bar, and a lot of people with the SIs upgrade to the LX front sway bar, because to make a front wheel drive car fast, you want to stiffen the hell out of the rear end and soften in the front so that you get more lean in the front and more traction with the front tires, and you try to kind of tripod the car around the turns with lifting the rear wheel. So that's why getting a bigger rear sway bar is definitely going to help this thing be pretty fun on the roads on the way to work now. Another couple maintenance things I'm doing is spark plugs. I don't know when the last time they were changed in this car, so I just ordered some new spark plugs from Honda. I'm going to replace those. 180,000 miles, it can't hurt. But this is the thing I'm most excited for, and I will be making a separate video on this coming up very shortly. But I believe this may be, don't quote me, but I think it may be the last brand new in-box Honda HFP suspension for any 8th gen on the market today. I just got this in last winter, straight from a Honda dealership. They were able to source it for me, and I got a decent deal on it. I didn't get as good a deal as the one I put on the SI back a few years ago, but this one is the exact part number for a base model Civic with the manual transmission. So the spring rates and everything are balanced for it. It should drop the car about an inch. It's going to make the rear end stiffer, which is going to help with towing, help with payload in the rear of the car, and just make it much more fun, in addition to the SI rear sway bar, to carve some turns on the way to work. So like I said, I'll be making a separate video to unbox this, and I think it's pretty cool that I think this thing dates back to like 2006 or 2007. It's never been opened. Of course, I should say I opened it to check everything was there, but the reason I think this is still available from Honda, everything else for the SI and the coupes and everything for HFP suspension is sold out everywhere. They don't have them anymore. And the manual four-door base models, especially the LX Sport, I think were the most rare 8th gen sold, because not many people bought a four-door if they wanted a base model in a manual. They wanted to have either the SI, or they weren't into driving sticks, so they just went with an automatic base model. But this suspension, the part number for this, is still available, and I don't know if it's available when I'm posting this video, but it was available, and it said very limited quantity available end of last year in 2019 when I purchased it. So I think the fact that these were the least amount of cars in the 8th gen trim sold, and since they made an HFP suspension kit for them specific to the base model with a manual transmission, because it's about 50 to 60 pounds lighter up front than an automatic transmission, they changed the spring rates for that as well and optimized it. But this part number is one of the last ones you can buy brand new. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned. Like I said, I'm going to put up a video of how much this drops the car and what I think of it when I get it on there, and maybe a little unboxing of it. But stay tuned, and catch you guys in the next one.